They always tell you being a mother is about giving, but they don't tell you what happens when the giving never ends, when your hands grow weak and the same people you raised act like you were never there at all. This isn't just a revenge story. It's the story of a woman who gave everything and what happened when her own child forgot who she really was. When I was 34, I worked the night shift at the county hospital. I was a nurse back when you had to lift patients by hand before electric beds did the work for you. I wore cheap white sneakers and washed my scrubs in vinegar to get the bloodstains out. My husband Edward was a mechanic then. He'd come home with oil under his nails, tired to the bone, but always smiling when he saw me and our little boy, Derek. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and when Edward got sick, stage 4 cancer, the kind that eats from the inside out, I was the one who bathed him, held his spoon, whispered in his ear when he forgot what year it was. I still remember the night he asked me, "Evie, promise me you'll keep the house running, even when I'm gone, even when it gets too hard." I promised, because that's what love looks like when you've been through fire with someone. After he passed, it was just me and Derek. He was in his 20s by then, smart kid, but never settled. One job to the next. I used to drive across town to help him set up every new apartment, brought him groceries, paid his rent more times than I can count. I even sold the old car Edward left me so Derek and Rachel, his new wife, could put a down payment on their starter home. When Derek lost his job in 2009, I did what any mother would do. I said, "Move in with me. Save your money." He said, "Mom will take you in instead. You'll have your own room. Eli will love having Grandma around." It sounded sweet at the time, like a full circle kind of moment. But circles, they don't always close the way you think. I packed up my things, just a few boxes, mostly old photo albums and Edward's Bible. I let go of the last bit of my independence, thinking I was trading it for something better, a family under one roof. The end of loneliness. At first, it was good. I made breakfast every morning, got Eli to school, even with my knees screaming on cold mornings. I folded their laundry, patched Derek's shirts, made dinner while Rachel worked late. I didn't mind. I liked feeling useful, like maybe I still had a place. But over time, the small things started to shift. They stopped asking if I wanted coffee in the morning, stopped thanking me for folding the towels, stopped looking me in the eye at dinner. It wasn't dramatic, just gradual, like being erased with a soft pencil. Still, I held on, because that's what mothers do. We hold on, even when we shouldn't. There was this one day, Eli was sick, coughing hard. Rachel had a work call. Derek was at the office. So I stayed home, made soup, rubbed his back, sat beside him till he slept. I didn't even tell them. I didn't think I needed to. Later that week, Rachel asked why the floor wasn't mopped. My back had been bad and I couldn't bend for more than a minute. I apologized. She sighed, said nothing more. That night, I soaked my hands in warm water and whispered to Edward's picture on the nightstand. "They'll see it one day, Ed. They'll remember." But remembering requires someone to look backward, and they were always rushing forward toward work promotions, soccer practice, weekend getaways I was never invited to. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was old-fashioned, that maybe I was just tired. But deep down, a bruise had started to form, not on my skin, but in my spirit. I wanted so little. A cup of tea, a moment of kindness, a thank you every now and then. I didn't need flowers. I just didn't want to feel like wallpaper, like something you get used to and forget is even there. Then came that night. It was just a Wednesday. Meatloaf, overcooked peas, the usual. We sat down to eat. I passed the salt. Eli giggled at something on his tablet. Rachel looked across the table and said, "She eats but doesn't help. I'm not her babysitter." Just like that, no warning, no laugh, flat and sharp like a blade. My fork paused mid-air. And Derek? He didn't even flinch, didn't say, "Hey, Mom raised me with nothing but her hands." Didn't say, "That's not fair, Rachel." Didn't even look at me. He just kept chewing. And then he swallowed and said quietly, like he was doing me a favor, "Maybe, Mom, maybe it's time we talk about other options. A care facility or something. I felt the whole room tilt sideways. I looked at Eli. He had gone silent. And I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't argue. I just picked up the plates one by one, stacked them neatly, walked them to the sink. The same sink I had washed hundreds of dishes in, the same counter I'd wiped down after midnight dinners when Derek came home drunk in college, the same kitchen where I taught him how to make pancakes when he was 10. I didn't say a word, because the words they'd used were loud enough. That night, I sat in the tiny room they called mine, a converted storage space with a cot and one window I couldn't even reach. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the television, the wine glasses clinking, my son laughing with his wife like nothing had just been broken. And I knew in the pit of my stomach, they didn't forget what I gave. They just decided it didn't matter anymore. The sound of dishes clinking in the sink felt louder than it should have. Not because they were heavy, but because the silence around them had weight. A silence that came right after Rachel said, "I just eat and don't help." And Derek, my own son, didn't say a word to stop her. I rinsed the plates, dried them one by one, and lined them neatly on the rack. I did it slowly. Not because my hands were shaking, though they were, but because I needed to feel something I could control. When I turned around, they were gone, left the table like nothing had happened. They didn't say goodnight. They didn't say thank you. They didn't even say my name. I made my way back to the small room they gave me, a converted storage space with a cot, no closet, and a window too high for me to look out of without standing on a chair. I sat on the edge of the bed, unzipped my sweater, and listened. The TV was on. Some game show, maybe. Derek's voice low. Rachel's laugh sharp. A glass clinked. Then more laughter. Like my presence had been scrubbed out of their memory already. Like dinner hadn't ended in something shattered. It wasn't the first time Rachel said something cold. It was the first time she said it straight to my face. And it was the first time Derek didn't flinch. That was the part that gutted me. Not her words, but his silence. There's a kind of hurt that only your child can give you. It's not just pain, it's a breaking of the foundation you built with your own 2 hands. I lay down that night with my back to the door. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, listening to the fan click with each slow spin. My knees ached. My wrists throbbed. But none of that compared to the heaviness in my chest. Have you ever felt that? That strange kind of grief. Not for a person who died, but for a love that once lived and is now quietly gone. If you've ever sat in a room that used to feel like home and realized you no longer belonged, then you understand what I mean. And I'd honestly love to hear your story too. If you feel comfortable, share it in the comments below. You never know who might need to see that they're not the only one. The next morning, I made coffee. I folded the laundry Rachel left in the basket. I fixed the loose button on Eli's jacket and laid it gently over his backpack. I didn't say a word about the night before. Part of me hoped Derek would say something, maybe pull me aside, apologize, say Rachel didn't mean it. He didn't. 2 days passed. Then came the weekend. Saturday morning, I overheard Rachel say, "We're heading upstate. Just us. The cabin's too small for extra people." Extra people. That's what I had become. Derek didn't even meet my eyes when he walked past me with their suitcase. He just mumbled, "We'll be back Sunday night." They left, just like that. No hug, no check-in, no note on the fridge, no snacks in the pantry, just gone. I stood in the hallway after the door closed, hands still damp from rinsing Eli's cup. I looked at the quiet house. My reflection in the hallway mirror startled me. I looked smaller than I remembered. I stood there a long time, just breathing in the silence. Then something shifted. Not rage, not even sadness, just a kind of stillness, a knowing. A thought came to me as clear as sunlight through glass. If they won't see you, leave before they remember to push you out louder. I packed one small suitcase, just my essentials. Some documents, my rosary, the old leather notebook Edward gave me on our 25th anniversary. I didn't leave a note. Instead, I placed the house key on the kitchen table next to a clean dish towel I had folded that morning. I took the bus across town. No taxi. No one to drive me. Just me, my aching knees, and a lifetime of memories tucked into a bag no bigger than a carry-on. The care home wasn't fancy. It was the kind of place that smelled faintly of boiled vegetables and bleach. But it was clean, quiet. The woman at the front desk didn't ask why I was there. She just gave me a form and said, "Take your time, sweetheart." I smiled politely and filled it out with slow hands. Name: Evelyn Moore, emergency contact, none. That night, I sat on the edge of a narrow bed that creaked under my weight. I wrapped myself in a crocheted blanket I'd made 2 winters ago. The stitches felt looser than I remembered, but they still held. Outside the window, I could just barely see the outline of a tree. Its branches moved with the wind like it was waving to no one. I didn't cry, but I did whisper to the empty room, "You gave everything, and now they see you as nothing." And then, from somewhere deep in my chest came another voice, a smaller one. One I hadn't heard in a long, long time. What if they're wrong? The first night at the care home was quiet. Too quiet. No refrigerator humming, no footsteps overhead, no grandchild sneaking in after bedtime to ask for a story. Just the sound of my own breath, slow and steady, in a room that smelled faintly of bleach and boiled peas. The walls were pale yellow, the kind of color someone probably thought would feel cheerful. But it didn't. Not really. It just felt like somewhere people were put, not places they chose to be. There was a twin bed, a narrow dresser, and a chair by the window that faced the parking lot. I sat on that chair for a long time that night. I watched the parking lot lights blink on one by one, as if announcing to the world that another day had ended, and I had survived it. But it didn't feel like survival. It felt like vanishing. I thought about calling Derek, just to let him know I was safe. Maybe leave a message. Say, "Don't worry, I'm fine." But I didn't. I wanted to see how long it would take before they noticed I was gone. 1 day passed. Then 2. No call, no voicemail, not even a text asking if I was okay. I had left their house, my house, and no one seemed to care. It was a strange kind of grief. Not loud, not wailing, just a slow ache, like watching someone erase your name from a family photo with the edge of their thumb. I unpacked my things on the 3rd day, folded the blanket I brought from home, and placed it at the foot of the bed. I found Edward's old Bible and slipped it into the drawer next to my rosary. I placed a small photo of him on the windowsill. He was smiling in it, his mechanic's overalls stained with grease, arms crossed, as proud as the day he opened his first shop. He would have hated seeing me here, not because it was a care home, but because I had come here alone. I sat with that feeling for a while. Then I remembered something. An old conversation we had long before the cancer, before everything. It was during one of our late-night talks, back when we'd sit out on the porch after putting Derek to bed. "Evie," he said, rocking slowly in his chair, "if you ever feel invisible in your own home, you leave. Don't wait for them to say it out loud. You'll know." And I had known. That night at the dinner table, when Derek didn't say a word in my defense, that was the moment. That was the knowing. I looked at his picture again. My fingers brushed the corner of the frame. There, taped to the back, was a small, folded note I'd forgotten about. I peeled it off gently. It was from the day he came home from his final treatment. His hands were shaking, but his handwriting was still strong. If the day ever comes that you feel like a guest in your own life, open the back of my Bible. What's mine is yours. My heart skipped. I stood slowly, stiffly, and opened the drawer. The Bible was worn from use. The spine nearly cracked. I opened it carefully, found the back cover, and there it was. A small folded envelope tucked between the last page and the leather flap. Inside was a single page of paper, aged, a little yellowed, but official. My name. my full legal name, the address, his signature. He had signed the house over to me 15 years ago, before the cancer took him, before I ever moved in with Derek, before Rachel ever walked into our lives, and I had never told anyone. I sat down, the paper trembling in my hands, not from anger, not from power, from something else. Validation. All these years, I thought I was staying in their home, cooking in their kitchen, sleeping in a storage room they let me use. But the truth was, they were living in my house. I had sacrificed everything for them, not because I wanted anything in return, but because I loved them, and I thought love was enough to be remembered. But now I knew better. They didn't forget. They just decided to pretend. The next morning, I got dressed early, brushed my hair, put on the lipstick Edward used to call Peach Rose. I opened my notebook, the one I brought with me for over 30 years, and I flipped to the very last page. I wrote one line. Today, I remembered who I am. Then I picked up the phone and dialed the number I hadn't called in more than a decade. Marks & Associates, this is Ellen, said the receptionist. Hi, I said calmly. This is Evelyn Moore. I need to speak to Mr. Alan Marks. There was a pause, then a click, then a soft voice I hadn't heard since Edward's funeral. Evelyn, he said. I was wondering when you'd call. The office hadn't changed. Same old oak desk, same smell of leather, paper, and time, same soft ticking from the grandfather clock in the corner that made everything feel slower, steadier, like nothing rushed here, especially not pain. Alan looked older, of course. We both did. But when he stood up and offered me that gentle smile, it was like stepping back into something safe. I figured I might see you one day, he said. I nodded, holding the envelope with the deed inside like it might fall apart if I breathed too hard. He motioned for me to sit, and I did, lowering myself slowly into the chair across from him. It felt familiar, like the past wasn't quite finished yet. I found it, I said. His Bible, his note, the deed. Alan opened a drawer, pulled out a manila folder with my name already written on the tab. I've kept it updated, he said, every year, as instructed. He slid it across the desk. You'll find the notarized transfer from Edward. Full rights, no contest. You've had legal ownership since 2008. I opened the folder. There it was, my name, the address, Edward's signature, stamped, sealed, certified. I stared at it for a long time, the words blurred, not because I couldn't see, but because something inside me finally could. For 15 years, I had believed I was a guest, a dependent, a burden. All the while, I was the rightful owner of the home I was asked to leave. I never used it, I whispered. Not once. I didn't want to. Alan poured me a cup of tea. 2 sugars, no milk. The way I liked it. The way Edward used to make it. I know, he said softly. But now you're here. I looked up at him. I want to sell it. His eyebrows lifted, not in surprise, just in quiet acknowledgement of something long overdue. I want it done quietly, I added. No calls, no notice. I want them to hear it from the mailman, not from me. Alan nodded. We can handle that. I closed the folder, hand steady now, not with power, not with vengeance, just steadiness, like something had returned to me, something that was mine all along. It wasn't about punishing them. It wasn't about making them cry. It was about no longer pretending that I didn't matter. For too long, I had sat at someone else's table, hoping for scraps of kindness. Now I saw it for what it was. They didn't forget what I'd given them. They just chose not to honor it. The next day, I returned to the care home with a quietness that felt different from before, not like shame, not like loneliness. This quiet came with clarity. I unpacked the documents, sat at the small desk in my room. I read each page line by line, not because I needed to, but because it felt right to see it all, to witness it with my own eyes, not as someone seeking approval, but as someone reclaiming her place. In that same desk drawer, next to the deed, I placed the old notebook Edward gave me, the one I'd written in for years, I flipped through the pages, saw notes I'd left myself over time. March 2011, paid their rent for 3 months. April 2014, bought crib and stroller for Eli. November 2020, groceries during the pandemic, 5 months. $4,500 total. So many pages, so many unspoken gifts. I never kept score. But now, the record reminded me, I hadn't just been there. I had carried them. And they had called me useless. The sunset hit my window just right that evening. Warm gold poured across the dresser and onto my lap like a soft blessing. I looked at Edward's picture and said aloud, "You knew I'd need this. You saw it coming, even when I didn't." And that was the thing. He had believed in me more than I'd believed in myself. He hadn't left me a weapon. He had left me a choice. And now, after years of being silent, I had finally made it. 3 days after I signed the paperwork, the house officially went on the market. Alan took care of everything. Quietly, just as I asked. No for sale sign, no open house tours. Just a private listing sent to a trusted buyer in his network. It sold within the week. They didn't know, not yet. I asked Alan to delay the official notification until the ink dried. I didn't want them warned, not out of spite, but because sometimes silence is the clearest answer you can give to someone who stopped listening a long time ago. When the sale finalized, Alan called me. "It's done," he said simply. "Funds are transferred. You'll receive the final documents in the mail." I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled. Not in relief, not in triumph, but in something harder to name. Like breathing for the first time after holding it in too long. A week later, I found it. A small, neglected house on the east side of town. Peeling paint, a sagging porch. But it had good bones, like something waiting to be useful again. Most people wouldn't have given it a second look, but I did. Because I saw something else in it. A reflection. Of me. A place once full of life, worn down by time and weather, but still standing. Still worthy. I bought it the next day. No hesitation, not for me to live in, but for something bigger. I called it the Hearth. A simple name. A quiet symbol. A place for women like me. Women who had given everything only to be told they were now too much or in the way. Not a nursing home, not a shelter, a beginning. I didn't tell anyone. Not Derek, not Rachel, not even the staff at the care home knew at first. I started slow. Had a local handyman, Tommy, fix the front porch. He told me his mother had died in a nursing home no one visited. He worked weekends for free after that. We painted the walls soft colors. Lavender, sage, warm gold. I found secondhand furniture with character, nothing too new, nothing too stiff. Just enough comfort to say, "You matter here." I planted herbs in repurposed teacups on the kitchen windowsill. Set out blankets I crocheted years ago, one for every bed, and then I invited the first guest, Helen. She'd been in the room down the hall at the care home, wiry, sharp-tongued, always pretending she didn't care. But I knew better. I heard her once crying behind the bathroom door. Her son had asked her to move out the day after her birthday. Said she was bringing down the mood. When she walked into the hearth and saw her name stitched on a pillow in the front room, she covered her mouth with both hands and whispered, "You didn't forget me." I shook my head. I remember the ones the world tries to erase. Soon there were more. Miss Beatrice, who used to be a school teacher. Marion, a retired florist who still hummed while she arranged tea towels. And Roland, our first man. A widower who brought his cast iron skillet and cooked better than all of us combined. We became a quiet tribe. Not loud, not dramatic, just full of life again. We shared meals, told stories, laughed over nothing. We helped each other up the stairs, brought soup when someone had a cold, danced in socks on Sunday mornings when the sunlight hit the kitchen just right. And no one, not a single soul, asked if we were contributing. Because here, no one had to earn their right to belong. One morning, I stood by the front window, sipping tea from my favorite chipped cup, the kind that fits your hand just right, like it remembers you. The mail truck drove by. Inside it, somewhere, was a certified letter, addressed to Rachel and Derek. A formal notice. 30 days to vacate. I didn't imagine their reaction. I didn't need to. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth, about balance, about reclaiming something I had given away too freely for too long. My place in the story. I walked out to the garden and checked on the basil Marion planted. It was thriving. So was she. Helen was sitting on the porch, knitting with sharp focus, like each stitch was an act of defiance. Roland waved from the kitchen. And I took a long breath and let the silence settle around me. I wasn't waiting for a thank you, or a call, or closure. I had already found it, right here, in a house built on forgotten kindness, in a home where no one kept score, because no one had to. The letter must have arrived on a Thursday. I knew because Friday morning my phone lit up with Derek's name. I let it ring. Then it rang again, and again. I watched the screen from across the room, didn't move. By Saturday night, I got a message. Mom, please, we need to talk. We didn't know. Rachel's crying. The kids are scared. Please, can we fix this? I read it once, then turned the phone face down on the table and walked out into the kitchen. Roland was making pancakes, humming an old blues tune under his breath. Helen sat at the table with her arms crossed, pretending not to like the smell but already setting out the syrup. Miss Beatrice was watering the plants, muttering to them like they were second graders who hadn't turned in homework. This was my life now, and it was full. Sunday evening, I picked up the phone. This time, when Derek called, I answered. He sounded different, like someone who had run out of excuses. His voice didn't have that usual edge of defense. It was low, raw. Mom, he said quietly, we got the letter. We're losing the house. I don't know what to say. I messed up. I didn't say anything. I let the silence do what it needed to. I should have stood up for you, he continued. I should have said something when we... God, I just didn't think you'd really leave. You didn't think I had anywhere to go, I said. He paused. No, I didn't. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. That's the problem. His voice cracked. We have nothing, Mom. Rachel's furious. Eli keeps asking where you are. I sleep on a friend's couch. I work nights. Everything's falling apart. I looked out the window at the small garden we'd built in the backyard of the hearth. Basil, mint, lavender, simple things growing without noise. I'm not taking anything from you, Derek, I said. I'm only reclaiming what you thought I'd forgotten was mine. There was a pause. Is there any way to undo it? I closed my eyes for a second. No, I said. I'm not trying to punish you. I'm just finally done asking for permission to exist. He exhaled, long and broken. I never meant for you to feel that way. But you did. Another silence, then. Is there anything I can do to help? With the house? With the other women? I shook my head even though he wasn't in the room. This place doesn't need your guilt. It needs your growth. I let that sit there. Then, after a moment, I said gently, live better, love better. That's how you honor what I gave. He sniffled, mumbled something like a thank you, and hung up. And just like that, the line was quiet again. Later that afternoon, I pulled out a small wooden box from the drawer near my favorite chair. Inside, I kept a copy of the deed to the hearth, a few photographs, and one final gift, a blank page. No address, no name, just empty. I placed it in an envelope and wrote, "For your future," on the front. I mailed it the next morning. Maybe he'll never fill it. Maybe he will. But I've learned that not every ending needs applause. Some just need peace. That evening, I sat on the porch with Helen. We drank chamomile tea in chipped mugs. The sun was low and buoyant, laying long shadows across the grass. The wind chimes made from old spoons danced in the breeze. Helen looked at me, her eyes softer than usual. You feel different lately, she said. I smiled. I stopped waiting. For what? To be thanked. If you're still reading this, if you've made it all the way here, maybe you're like me. Maybe you gave, and then one day, They acted like it didn't count. Maybe your name disappeared from the dinner table, from the conversations, from the photo frames. And maybe, just maybe, you've been sitting with that quiet ache, wondering if you imagined your own worth. You didn't. You were never invisible. You were just in a house where no one looked long enough to see you. But I see you now, and I hope you see yourself again, too. Have you ever walked away? Not in anger, but in quiet strength? Have you ever stopped asking to be loved the right way and started living like you deserve to be? If so, I'd be honored to hear your story. Share it below. You never know who might feel less alone because of your words, because sometimes the quietest lives leave the deepest echo. And this is not the end. This is the porch, the tea, the sunlight, and the peace that finally came. Not because they gave it to me, but because I stopped waiting for them to.